how do you balance going down multiple paths in an offseason about sequence and timing and things like that, knowing which direction you're going to go?
Yeah, I think regardless of what the offseason looks like or what players are available, you always have to have parallel paths.
Yeah.
You have to be talking to multiple players at once. You have to balance free agents and trades as well. So that's nothing new, and I don't think it is dependent on where in the off-season player pool you're necessarily looking. I think that's true in any off-season.
Well, the way when there's somebody like a Soto who's going to be a very top of the market guy for an exorbitant amount of money, as from a GM perspective, President, how do you balance the benefit of 5 players for that one, especially when you have a lot of, with a roster like you guys have, with a lot of holes to fill?
Yeah, I think those are the types of decisions that we have to work through whenever we're talking about trade-offs of one player versus another player, multiple players versus one player. Again, on a lot of these decisions, and some of you have heard me say this before, there's no magic formula. There's a lot of debate and discussion, dialogue. How much resources do you want to concentrate into one position? What is the benefit of spreading those around? And the answers can be different depending on where you are in an off season. It can be depending on where you are in a competitive cycle. It can be different depending on where you are from a roster standpoint and a roster construction standpoint. So, again, I think those are the types of discussions that we will continue to have internally. And frankly, we're not going to have concrete answers to them until we make a decision to sign a particular player or not, and then we'll move forward.
David, when it comes to Pete, you're not starting from scratch, right? You're just kind of picking up conversations that you've had, throughout the year. Tell us about the process when it's your own player like that.
So just as a practice, I don't comment on any negotiations or any specific player. Pete's been a great Met. Would love to have him back, and I'll leave it there.
In general, when it is your own guy, which I guess you didn't do a whole lot of in Milwaukee, but how is that a different negotiation than when you're getting to know a guy and maybe he wants to meet you and the manager and the owner, et cetera?
Yeah, there's a familiarity, and that should help. There's a familiarity. There's an understanding who the player is. There's an understanding what the organization is and how those two sides fit. So I think familiarity is a good thing.
Scott Boras earlier today talked about, in dealing with the Juan stuff, that he mentioned the owners were going to be an important part of that process, expressing their plans for the team, and winning, what money they were going to put back in. How much of an asset is Steve in that regard, and being a guy who is out front with that type of stuff?
I think Steve's investment in our team is clear, and his desire to win is clear, and he's been able to forge some really good relationships with players over the early part of his ownership tenure here, and I think that is a huge benefit for our club. He wants to do that. He wants to understand who our players are, what makes them tick, what is important to them, so that we can do everything we can to put them and their families in the best position to succeed. And so Steve has already demonstrated that throughout his ownership tenure here, and I think he'll continue to demonstrate that.
Do you think that's changed a lot, Dave, in recent years, how much agents like Scott and their clients want to hear directly from owners and not just presidents and GMs?
Yeah, I think players should want to hear from owners. I think players should want to understand what the commitment is to win in a particular organization. And certainly players of a certain stature who are making the type of long-term commitment to an organization should want to hear from all segments of the organization, including at the ownership level.
You dabbled in the deep end of free agency last year in the case of Yamamoto. You don't have a ton of experience with that generally running a team. What is it like with Steve's resources in that paradigm shift for you personally going about your job in a different way?
Yeah, it's a great opportunity. I think whenever you have access to every tier of free agency and every tier of available player, that's a tremendous opportunity. And it opens up doors, and we have to decide which door to walk through or which doors to walk through at times, and that's really the fun part of this job. And to have more doors opening in front of you is a benefit.
How much is your priority to upgrade the starting pitcher?
Yeah, starting pitching is certainly a priority for us. We have 3 free agent starting pitchers who combine for a lot of starts, a lot of innings for us, and so that's certainly going to be a priority for us as we move through the offseason.
Are you looking for like a top 1, 2, or are you like a 4, 5 end of the rotation guy? How do you see it?
Yeah, I don't think we necessarily look at starters as number 1s, number 2s. I think we're looking really to acquire effective starters. We had Sean Manaea last year, who pitched like an ace for the last 3 months of baseball. He was arguably one of the best pitchers in all of baseball, and coming into the season, I don't know that a lot of people would have looked at him as a prototypical ace, but he was for us. At times, Luis Severino was also an ace for us. So I think certain players come with that pedigree, and certain players have the potential to become that, and I think we're open to either path.
I know you don't want to talk about the specific players, but have you ever seen Sugano?
I'm not going to talk about specific players.
Sort of a weird position for you in the sense that sometimes you make the playoffs, a young team that's sort of building to something, but you kind of just made it and have all these free agents. And so, you know what I mean? Like, where do you kind of view your team as you go into 25 in that respect? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think we had a really nice year where a number of our core players performed at a high level. A number of those players are going to return next year. And yes, we have spots we're going to have to fill and do so intelligently, but that's an opportunity for us. And that's not too dissimilar from what good teams have to go through year over year. The formula is going to change. The mix is going to change every single year. I think that's healthy for an organization. I think that allows us to continuously evaluate where we are, what our strengths are, what our deficiencies are, and then hopefully go out and target the players that help make us better.
How do you weigh the risk and reward of a player that could get 10, 12 years, and you say, okay, we could get this many great years, but we could get what the Angels got from Pujols the last few years? That's got to be a tough call when you're thinking of making a potential huge commitment.
Sure. And any multi-year free agent commitment, you have to think through, what is this going to look like in year 1? What is this going to look like in year 2? What is this going to look like in year 3? And so on. And the longer the commitment, the more complicated that analysis becomes, and the more chance for variability in performance it becomes. And that's certainly part of all of these discussions that we're having internally, and it's no different than every other club is going to go through.
Obviously, Juan is one example of a player for whom you might have to bid against many other big market teams, but there are others too. In general, how much do you kind of set a number and say, I'm going here no matter where that goes? Like, how do you just kind of assess that part of free agent analysis?
I think in any negotiation, whether it's a trade negotiation or a free agent negotiation, we try to come up with a negotiation plan. We try to understand how the negotiation may play out, and ultimately where our thresholds are. And I think that's a healthy way to do these things. We don't have absolutes. There's nothing we're going to do that's an absolute. We have to react to the market. We have to react to the needs of our team and how the offseason evolves. But we have an idea of how we're going to value players, and for the most part, we're going to stick to it.
Last year, it seemed like there was a sense that everybody was waiting on Ohtani. The Ohtani domino had to fall, and then other players could figure out where they were going. Teams who did not get Ohtani knew what sort of money they had left. Is it similar to this offseason with Soto?
We'll find out. I don't know. I don't know how teams are going to react. I don't know what teams are going to be interested in which players. And so I think every free agent season, every offseason plays out a little bit differently. Pretty early for me to determine or predict how this one will play out.
Do you need the Soto question to be resolved before you go down other 9-figure roads?
I'm not going to comment on any specific player negotiation, but we're going to stay in contact with a wide variety of players throughout free agency, and that includes right now.
you consider yourself in the market for a center fielder?
I think we'll evaluate that. We have confidence in Tyrone Taylor.
Yeah.
I think certainly bringing in someone who potentially has the ability to play center field alongside him is a path we could go down. So that's something that I think we'll continue to look at throughout the offseason.
You don't view it as an obvious hole then?
No, I don't view it as a whole.
Yankees and Mets could be going for the same players this year. Through the history, you haven't seen that a whole lot. Do you feel that competitiveness where your fans and their fans are rooting for this guy? How do you view that being in the same town as the Yankees? Are they just another team, or do you feel them being in town?
I think from my perspective, I'm most focused on making the right decisions for the Mets, regardless of what any of our other 29 teams are doing, including the team that happens to be across the town. I think we have to make the right decisions for us, put ourselves in the best chance to compete continuously, and that's what I'm going to be focused on.
David, when you mentioned Jeff McNeil and his flexibility, like you did yesterday, ability to play second base, the output as well, does what you do maybe this offseason influence where he plays for you or what he does? Because he's also a name that gets thrown out there in trade speculation as well.
Yeah, I think with a player with Jeff's versatility, how we construct the roster, he allows us to construct a roster in many different ways. We don't have to put him in ink in any one position. He can move around and help us fill out a roster and play an important part on the roster, depending on who we bring in here.
Last year, you guys went for Yamamoto. You guys have a Kodai right now. How do you view the Japanese, like a free agent, or the Japanese market in general?
So I think more and more we're seeing really quality players, particularly pitchers, coming over from Japan. It's a market we've been involved in the past. I would expect us to continue to be involved with it when it makes sense. And clearly it's becoming more of an annual basis where really talented Japanese pitchers are coming over.